Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Brian Durr. I'm the Digital and Audiovisual Manager for Pinellas County. And I just wanted to make sure first that everyone is aware that we are recording this meeting tonight, and it will be available on the county website. Before we start tonight's meeting, I want to just give you a quick overview of how we're going to be using Zoom for tonight's meeting for anybody who may not be as familiar with it as others. We'll be using Zoom in two ways tonight. We'll be using the Q&A function where you can type in a question, and we'll also be using the raise hand function. To use the Q&A function, simply move your mouse on your screen if you're using the Zoom application, and you'll see this menu that you're seeing on the screen here. This menu has the raise hand and Q&A buttons on it. Just simply click the Q&A if you would like to type in a question. You'll see a screen come up like this, and you can type your question in and click send. The questions will only be seen by the moderators, and then they'll answer them at two different sections of the meeting tonight. The second way that we'll be taking comments is by having people raise their hand. Now, if you called in on a telephone, actually dialed a phone number, then when you want to raise your hand, simply press *9, and that will let the moderators know that you would like to ask a question. If you're using the Zoom app on your phone or on a tablet or on your computer, simply mouse over and that menu will appear, as I mentioned before, and click the raise hand button. If for some reason you want to lower your hand, maybe someone's already asked the question while you were waiting that you were going to ask, then simply click it again and you can lower your hand. Once you have been called on to speak, you should see this window pop up that says the host would like you to speak. And you need to click the unmute button in order to unmute yourself and then go ahead and ask your question. If you dialed in on the phone, you may need to press *6 in order to unmute yourself. If that box comes up and you accidentally click the wrong thing, don't worry. When you're in the main Zoom app, if you've been set up to be allowed to speak because you've been called on, you also can unmute yourself using the button at the bottom left. That only shows up once the host has called on you to speak. So with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Brian Lowack, who is Assistant to the County Administrator for Mid and South Unincorporated Pinellas. Brian?
Thanks, Brian, and good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Lowack, and I'm the Assistant to the County Administrator for Central and Southern portions of Pinellas County, including Tierra Verde. I'm really glad to see so many members of the community participating tonight, and want to thank you all for taking the time to discuss this important topic. So if you'll recall, the last update on this topic was on July 8th at the board's work session. At that time, Kelly presented an update on the project and recommended assessment methodology to the board. Following that meeting, the TVCA Board of Directors provided feedback, asked questions, and really gave us their overall thoughts on the assessment that was presented. It was clear at that time that they wanted something that was more equitable for the property owners. Kelly and her team took that feedback and really went to work, getting very creative, pulling individual deeds and parcel information, and came up with an assessment methodology that we believe addresses the desires expressed by the community. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce the new methodology, get feedback from the community, answer any questions that you may have, and provide a status update on the project. We'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions, and Kelly even has a couple interactive polls to gauge the community's interest. So again, I thank you all for joining us this evening, and I really want to give a thanks to the TVCA Board of Directors for their constant dialogue and really pushing us to explore all options for getting this done. I think Kelly has done a tremendous job in responding to the community and producing a methodology that you all will be pleased with. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kelli Levy, Director of Public Works, to begin her presentation.
All right, well, thank you very much, Brian and Brian. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. We have a lot of great information to share with you. And so with that, I just want to start with the goals of today's meeting. So we do want to provide a brief recap of what has been done, as well as bring you up to speed on that significant progress that Brian mentioned earlier, to share the cost estimates that we have for the project, and how we are doing everything that we can do to keep costs down for the residents out there, both now and in the future. And then we want to work with you, hear from you tonight, especially in those interactive polls that Brian mentioned, to see when we're going to show you the methodology that we presented to the board in July, just as a reminder of what was presented at that point in time, but then show you also the new methodology and explain that and how it works, and then ask you to tell us, based on what you're thinking tonight, what do you think is the best approach? What approach is most fair? So just a brief recap, what we learned through a lot of work, and those of you who have attended the many meetings know how much work has gone into understanding this issue out at Grand Canal and Shell Key. So what we know and what we understand is that about 30,000 cubic yards of sand is moving from the western boundary of Shell Key north, and then shifting to the east, moving towards Colony Key and Grand Canal. And we know that rate of accretion has increased over time. We've measured and modeled the flow within Grand Canal to better understand if it can flush well, and it is very low, unfortunately. We know that if nothing is done, that Grand Canal will be restricted. So this is not something that can go on forever. Ultimately, it would impact navigation. We know that reopening that old north-south cut is not feasible for both physical reasons, the sand moving in that direction, but also, there's some private property and property rights issues that are involved. And overall, the conclusions of this study were that the alternatives that we can permit, those that focus on Grand Canal and the immediate area, are the most feasible. So we have been working very hard to design this project. I know there's been a lot of concern about how long it takes. There is a lot of work that goes into collecting both environmental data, cultural data, survey and bathymetry data that help us understand the volume of material that would need to be removed, geotechnical information that helps us understand the quality of the material that's to be removed, and that way we can better understand how it can be reused or how it needs to be disposed of. And then there were various alternatives that were modeled so that we could understand which approach gave us the best bang for the buck, if you will, gave us the longest lasting project. And so that design included the Grand Canal within its current alignment out to Paso Grill Channel, as shown in the image. Basin 3, which is basically a sand trap just to the south of the Grand Canal itself, to about to the mean high water line. So that shape is not fixed in stone. It does have to kind of work with the property boundaries that we have. And then disposal and placement. And right now, that gold star, that is my cue to tell you that's the important part, because that is what would really keep the cost down here, is being able to beneficially reutilize this material as part of the upcoming Paso Grill nourishment. Permitting for this project is required by both the Army Corps of Engineers Regulatory Division as well as DEP. So I just wanted to be clear, we talk a lot about the Army Corps in relation to beach renourishment. This is a different branch of the Army Corps that is focused on regulatory permitting. So our timeline, you can see across the top, the green, those are all the things that we've accomplished to date. So we've gotten a lot done in a relatively short period of time, I feel. We are getting fantastic feedback from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. So that's one of the good news messages that I wanted to share. We had proposed to beneficially reutilize the majority of this material on Paso Grill, and the Department of Environmental Protection so far has given us a thumbs up. They agree that this is a good repurposing of this material. The overwhelming majority of it can be beneficially reutilized, and the feedback has been great so far. So we should be very close to finalizing the permitting process with the state. The federal permitting is in progress. And if you look over to the chart on the right, you'll see that we have the timeline on the federal permit going out quite far, about a year. This is just an unknown. We hope it doesn't take that long, but we can't predict. The Army Corps does not have specified timelines for permitting. So, we have to work within, their review schedules. We are touching base with them frequently to, make sure they have everything they need, and we will continue that process, throughout the permitting to make sure that it's moving along, but it can take a long time, and we'll do our best to try to hurry that up as much as we have, as much as we can. But just know that that piece of it is really not in our hands. Once we have those permits in place, we put the project out to bid and go through the contracting process. And really the dredging itself is pretty quick. It's only about a 3-month process. So once everything is in place, it can be accomplished very quickly. So right now, to date, initially the county spent about $200,000 on the feasibility study, and that was the Aptum study that was presented in 2020. Design and permitting is approximately $231,000 for the project, and construction is close to $3 million. So what we're looking at is, again, and I'm going to define these terms so that, because you're going to hear them again. Worst case scenario would be that the regulatory agencies don't support us using the material for beneficial reuse. Now, I've already told you that the state supports this, so that is the good news. So I don't believe that the worst case is going to happen because we've already received positive feedback there. The best case scenario is that $585,000 for this project, meaning that we can beneficially reutilize that material, and that a good chunk of the project cost can be paid for by the county. I've got another gold star here, that 5-year O&M estimate. This design is estimated to last 5 years, and that is conservative. The accretion rates that were modeled by Aptum back in the 2020 study are a little slower than what the model said it was, so that's good. So it may be a little longer than 5, but the storms can obviously make this a little bit difficult to say, but if nothing were to exacerbate the conditions, then 5 years would be a reasonable estimate. A storm can obviously change that in a day. So but that's where we are. We are permitting this project in such a way that we are updating the federal permit. And that's part of our process, is we had to get permission from the Army Corps to modify their permit to be able to accept this material. And if that is ultimately approved, in the future, say this material, this sand trap, and any sand that was in Grand Canal could be removed and utilized as part of the nourishment project going forward. If that were to occur, there would be no future O&M for the community. So it would just be rolled into the projects as they come along. So we looked at a variety of funding options for this project, and I know that we've talked about many of them at the community meetings and the forums, and it's been presented at the board. The federal, right now, there really has been no interest in this particular area. It's not part of the federal channel. It's not part of the federal project. Again, if we get the sand trap in that area approved as a borrow area in the future, that piece of it, can move forward. But right now, there is no federal interest, and there are no state grant programs for navigational dredging of this kind. We looked at other public funding sources. Currently, our Tourist Development Council, or bed tax, if you will, it's what we use for beach renourishment. The funding policies don't allow for navigational dredging of this sort. It would set quite an unaffordable precedent for other navigational dredging across the county. We do get a lot of requests for this, and if you can just look at the cost of this particular project, and it's relatively small, it's about 60,000 cubic yards of material. Just kind of extrapolate that across the county and what that could look like. And we have received some feedback from some folks that, think that it would be unfair, for, if somebody lives in, the central part of the county, asking, well, why would I be paying for navigational dredging out in a community like that? And it's a reasonable question to ask. We looked at the non-ad valorem assessment, and it is current county policy. This is how we handle these types of projects. We've done a couple this way before, navigational dredging projects, as well as drainage assessment projects and paving assessment projects for private roads. It is the current county policy for these types of projects. And it's, if you're interested in reading it, you can read ordinance chapter 110, and it goes into kind of the details of the non-ad valorem assessment process and navigational dredging, among other services that can be provided using this method. It's a very common tool for local navigation projects. Hillsborough County uses it. The various cities use it. A lot of the counties, Manatee County also uses the same process. So it's very common methodology. And the costs are then, charged to what we call specially benefiting property owners, those that get the most from the project versus the general public. So again, we did focus very heavily on design alternatives that maximize the beneficial reuse of the material, because this offsets a lot of the costs and really provided the greatest opportunity. And being able to repurpose that material in Passive Grove Beach would decrease the cost of the community tremendously. So when we look at that best case scenario, that $585,000 to the community, that's the 18% private. So the remainder would be paid for by the county based on the quality of the material. About 82% of that sand could be beneficially reused. And we would propose to use that on Passive Grove Beach. That is what the permit application says. So the county would be funding 82% of the total project cost, with the community paying the remainder through an assessment type methodology. So how will this decision be made? Well, it's up to you. This is not anything that is forced. Every property owner, as we go through this process and we get closer to the permitting being concluded, every single property owner will receive a petition. It will have a parcel specific cost associated with it. And we will then ask for those petitions to come back to the county, and we will tally them up. Right now, county policy is that if 60% of the owners approve the assessment, then the project goes forward. But timing is dependent on the permitting feedback. We're hoping for spring to be able to do that, the petition, but if the permitting gets held up a little bit, might be a little later. So I'm going to go into the assessment methodologies that we looked at. And then we'll talk a little bit more specific about those that we actually looked at in depth. We looked at an equal per parcel, and obviously you can see that's a very popular methodology to use. That was not the feedback we received from the community, that's not equitable. So we moved on from that one, and property value was also a very difficult one to find equity, especially you could, look at for example, a house maybe that was built in the 70s, that's still pre-firm. It hasn't, really gone through extensive upgrades. And then you have maybe one right next door that was torn down and a new house is there. Well, The new house and the older house, they have the same ability to have a dock and the same ability to have water access, but is it really fair for the new house to pay more for the same special benefit? Then we looked at water access. And, Fort Myers has used it, Charlotte County, and Punta Gorda has a very extensive one. It is complicated. It did require us to look at every property, especially the condos, and look at how boat slips are assigned. But we did use that. We did look at that methodology, and that's one that we're going to present tonight. And then you're familiar with the linear frontage foot methodology, basically your frontage of seawall or waterfront that you have. Hillsborough County uses this methodology, and that was presented in July. So the two that we're going to go forward with right now and present to you are the water access methodology and the linear frontage feet, just to remind folks where we were in July. All right, so this is the linear frontage method, and we couldn't present like every parcel because, this one is where, every single house, their seawall is a little different. One may be 100 feet, one maybe 110 feet. So we were able to get to the point where we could, get to a linear foot cost. So I'm going to, again, focus on the best case estimates because, that appears to be where we're going. And it came out to about $35.42 per linear foot of water frontage. So you could go to the property appraiser's website and pull up your property, and they have dimensions, and you could, go to that waterfront dimension and multiply that by 35.42, and you'd have a good estimate of what you might pay using this linear frontage methodology. And then we have some examples. We did small, medium, large condo, small, medium, large, single family residential home, and then the marina, the commercial property at the back. All right, so the water access methodology revolves around assigning a common unit. And looking at the other local governments that have utilized this methodology, it really came down to utilizing water access surrogate via docks. So we went to the Pinellas County dock code, and basically our code allows a single family home to have one dock with 2 boat slips. Right. I know there folks may raise their hand, but wait a minute, I've got a jet ski lift and I've got all of these other amenity things, and that is true. You may have that, but the one thing that is in common for single family residential is you can have one dock and 2 slips. You can't have 3, you can only have 2. So our water access unit equals 2 boat slips. So 1 water access unit for every 2 boat slips. Condos were divided into 3 groups. When we looked at the deeds for various condos, some were assigned 2 slips, some were assigned 1 slip, and some were assigned none. And then the commercial property had both wet slips and dry slips. And so those were totaled together. And so now I'm going to show you what that methodology looks like in numbers after I show you what it looks like on the water. So again, we have a couple of single family home lots here that currently don't have a dock, but they can. A dock with 2 boat slips. And then we have some condos over here. We have 4 condos and 4 boat slips. So they're half an access unit. And then we have some condos here that some have slips, but some don't have any at all. And so if you don't have any at all, you're a quarter of an access unit. And here is what that looks like. So if you go over to the right-hand side and go under best case estimate, you can see that a single family residential home would pay about $1,200, a condo without a slip about $300, a condo with 1 slip about $600, a condo with 2 slips would be equal to a single family home, and then the marina would be close to $283,000. And so if you look at the percentage breakdown, that's about 50-50. So the commercial entities would contribute about 50%, and the residential about 50%. And here they are side by side. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment, let you take a look at that. So looking at, again, just the best case scenario, division of costs, when we presented the linear frontage methodology, Pinellas County would be paying 82% of the total project cost. The commercial was only about 2% of the project cost overall, and the residential was about 16%. When we utilize the water access unit methodology based on boat slips, the county would still be paying 82%, but the residential and the commercial would be contributing equally. Additionally, when we do an assessment, those costs can be split over multiple years. It's really dependent on what the community requests and then what the Board of County Commissioners would approve. So those costs would be, it's for the total project. So it's one time, it's not an annual cost, it's a one-time cost. It could be split over, you know, if you just want to pay it out over 1 year and be done, if that can do it, that can be handled, or 2, 4, 5 years, it can be spread out. So depending on what the community, the majority of the community would like to do, that is something that can be looked at as well. So here comes your first poll question. So got to ask you first. Before we move on to the poll questions, if you have any specific questions about the methodologies before we ask those poll questions, because I want to make sure that everybody understands the difference between the two. And then we will go on to the poll question and then finish up the presentation. And then there's more Q&A afterwards. So I would just ask that if you have questions that is not methodology related, if you could hold that for a minute. And let's check and see if we've got some questions very specific to the methodology. I'm going to go into the Q&A right now. It does not. Okay, so there is a question. As part of the assessment, were we able to understand the usage statistics of the canal by traffic other than the residents, the 500 houses, sightseeing, marina users, restaurant visits, etc.? We were not. This was the water access methodology was the best way we could get at actual access to the canal. All right. I'm not seeing any more questions specific about this. Okay, is this a one-time fee or a reoccurring fee? It is one time. Again, that one-time cost, if you're a single family homeowner, about $1,200, it's that $1,200, but if the community decides, it could be divided up among several years to pay that off. Please review the water access unit process again, okay? I'm gonna back up the screen. All right, so here's the general basis of the methodology. Our dock code of ordinances allows that single family home to have one dock with 2 boat slips. They may be configured in different ways, but there are 2 slips. So when you look at a single family home, they're all going to be charged the same. All right, so every single family home on the Grand Canal would have the same one water access unit assessed. And then the condo units are looked at very differently. Some of the condos, they have 4 units and they have 4 slips, pretty easy. So they're assigned 1 slip. Since they only have 1 slip, that's half of a water access unit. If they have no slips, we charge a quarter of an access unit. And then there are some condos that actually, the condo has 2 assigned slips to the condo and it's treated just like a single family home. And the commercial, we totaled up all of the wet slips, those that are in the water, and all of the dry slips that are in dry storage, and totaled those up and then divided them by 2 to get the actual number of units, since 1 unit is worth 2 boat slips. And then the visual of that, at least for the residential side, is a single family is 1 water access unit. A condo with a single slip is a half an access unit because it's half of a single family home. A condo that doesn't have a boat slip assigned, but still has the benefit of the canal and still has the property values are maintained by having a deep water canal, is a 1/4 of a unit. And then the commercial is based on their actual wet and dry slips combined, divided by 2. And this is what that looked like, and side by side. So I hope that helped. All right, so let me look at the questions again really quick, just to make sure. Are the condo numbers per condo or per unit? They are per unit. How is the general public assessed for their use? They're, if they're coming to the marina is paying those charges. That's, don't have anything more on that one. 90% of the traffic is not from Grand Canal residents. Why is the marina only paying half? The methodology that we have to find a methodology that is found sound and can be justified based on the various uses out there. The marina paying 50% of the cost is significant. There's still a lot of private vessels out there as well. So this was a methodology that got us closer to what was requested of the community, which was to make it more fair based on the marina having a lot more activity than any single family resident. How will the decision be made regarding which methodology to be used? Well, that feedback will come from you, and then that recommendation will be taken to the board. Has the county confirmed that they will solely offer linear frontage feet or water access usage? No decision has been made at this point in time, but these are the 2 methodologies that we wanted to bring with you tonight. The water access methodology was the one that got us closer to what the community requested with regard to the marina having more access on the water, having more usage on the water. And so those are the 2 methodologies. We really couldn't get there using the other 2 methodologies that we're aware of. Are the 500 properties only on the Grand Canal? Yes. For commercial, you only quoted the marina. What about the hotel and the restaurant who benefit from the location? The waterfront in front of the commercial property is in a land lease owned by the marina. The hotel and the restaurants don't have any docks or any other type of structures out there. It's all on that one land lease. Sorry, I'm still just going through and trying to answer questions related to methodology. And then some of this stuff we'll come back to later. We live in a condo with 10 units and 10 slips. Are we then a one slip community? It does sound that way. So you would be half of a unit. All right, so half of a water access unit, not a one unit. So just to be clear, one water access unit is a single family home. A condo with one slip is half of a water access unit. Right? When you say single family home, don't you really mean each single family lot as a home or as an empty lot pays the same? Correct. Yes, you're correct, because every single family lot or property they may not have a dock today, but they could tomorrow. And so that is the basis of the unit. You are correct, Mr. Berquist. How many slips were assigned to the marina? I'll have to go back to the table. Sorry, folks, really trying to make sure we get you all your answers. All right, so here we are. 232.5 water access units were charged to the condo. To the commercial property. So if you multiply that number by 2, that is how many slips they have, both wet and dry total. Right. So a condo with 10 units and 10 slips equals 5 water access units. Yes, half per unit, correct. So I think, how do you define a slip? It's defined by code. A boat slip, it can accommodate a boat. It can also be tie poles. Can also, 4 to 6 tie poles can also construe a slip. So that is defined in our code. So it's not arbitrary. I don't mean marina use. I'm talking about the boaters who utilize the canal. There is no way that we can, charge anyone who just might happen to come into the canal. How will your assessment method affect condominium associations that don't have one slip per unit? All right, I'm not sure if I'm going to understand this properly, so if I don't get it right, just help me out and type in another question. It's not the association that is charged, it's actually the unit owners. So when we pulled the deeds, you go in and you check the deeds, and it's it says, this unit, like unit 105 together with slip 3. If those are not assigned to the unit and they are actually owned by the association, then we'll have to look at how that is assigned. But I believe it's assigned to the actual unit. I'm not aware of any that we found that said that the slips were owned by the condo association proper. But if I didn't get that correct, let me know, and we can look into that later in detail if you have something. Does the marina only get 1 vote? Every property owner gets 1 vote. So it's not by condo association. It's by every single property owner on the canal, within the project area. Will each condo unit, each address receive a vote, or will each condo complex receive 1 vote? Again, it's by property owners, so not the association. Did the county commission determine or come up with these two methodologies, or is it based on other county proposals? Why are condos different than single family homes? The ability to have a slip varies dependent on condo unit, question mark. Well, the commission didn't come up with these. These are staff concepts based on the feedback that we received from the community. And the board has made no decision, I promise you that. Why are condos different than single family homes? It's based on the water access unit. So a single family home can have 2 boat slips, 1 dock. And so it's not different if the condo unit is assigned 2 boat slips, then it's identical to a single family home. But if a condo unit only has 1 slip, then they're half of what a single family home can have. And therefore they're half of that unit. So that is how that is calculated. The ability to have a slip varies dependent on condo unit. Yes, we have found that. Some condo units have no slips at all. And it's not called out for in their deed. What is the denominator of the water access unit? So if we have 5 water access unit, our portion is 5 divided by, it's not divided by anything. If there were 5 condos and they have 2 slips each, so you have 5 water access units, each condo would be assessed for 1 full water access unit. So it's not divided by anything. It's a straight number. To be clear, the assessment is only for residents with property on the Grand Canal, not Tierra Verde as a whole. Correct. Okay, we've already answered that one. Why are condos that have no slips charged at all? Because they still have a special benefit of being on the Grand Canal. Having direct Gulf access does maintain their property values, and that is why they still have, they are charged a quarter of a unit. Again, how far away from the canal are the condos that are included? It's those condos, single family homes, and commercial properties that directly abut the canal. And so it's the condominium complex within the property boundaries. Villaggio condominiums have 36 units, but only have 22 boat slips. How will you calculate this? This is where we actually went into the deeds and looked at each individual condo and looked to see if they were assigned a boat slip. Some units are, some units are not. Those that were assigned a boat slip, they may be half of a unit. Those that have no unit would be a quarter of a unit. So the marina gets 465 votes. Nope, they just get 1. That's not a. Perhaps you should clarify that you reviewed all condo deeds for specific slip rights. So a 10 slip, 10 unit condo building might still have a condo with 2 slips and some with 0. Correct. It's not determined by condo building. It's actually by unit. Does the methodology still only impact Madison Bridge South? If so, why? Yes, because under most conditions, in order to get out to the Gulf or out to Paso Roble Channel, you can't go under the bridge unless it's an extremely low tide and you have a very small boat. So still are dependent on Grand Canal for access. Those north of that bridge are not. Does the assessment cover residents of Cut G? I'm not sure what Cut G is. If you could follow up with another question so that I can properly answer that. Let's see. Just going back through. Okay, so not seeing any more questions at this moment for specific to the methodology. Let me check and see if we've got any hands. Got a lot of hands up, so I just want to make sure that we are right now. We're specifically addressing the methodology so that we can go on to the next part of the presentation. So Sheila, I'm going to unmute you, and now you can unmute yourself, Sheila.
You answered my question, although I wasn't really clear on the answer, but it was just that if 90% of the traffic is not Grand Canal, then how did we come up with 50% being the amount for the marina?
Again, it's based on the water access unit methodology that was presented. There's no way for us to toll other people who might come into the canal. I think most boaters that are going from the Gulf to the Intercoastal Waterway are using Paso Girl Channel. The boaters that would, come up there to go to the marina will be paying, their fair share, to accommodate the services they provide and all of the boat slips that they have.
I guess my question would really be what determined the fair share?
The number of water access units that the marina has. And it's based on the number of wet slips they have. Those are slips in the water, and the number of dry slips that they have in the storage total.
Right.
Together.
Right. So like 500 for them and 500 for residents. But a lot of the traffic is people coming in for fuel and various other reasons. So it seems like half is not quite fair because the traffic that comes in to use the services of the commercial property is not being accounted for in that.
Oh, I don't have any additional answers on that one. This is one methodology. I'm sorry, I can't answer that any further.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, Thomas, I'm unmuting you. Now you need to unmute yourself.
Hi. My question, and I sent it in question and answer also, kind of raised my hand by mistake first. But the problem I have with this, you truly don't have a dog in the fight. I don't live in the canal, is so you're going to repave the street in Sands Point. Are we going to use the exact same methodology?
No, those are, I would believe if you're talking about just the general streets out there in the neighborhood, those are public roads, so okay. They're not private. So they would be paid for by the county.
Right. The canal is also not privately held. It's a public waterway. I think one of the problems is you guys have used the word private a lot, and we all understand what private property is. And you may be stuck with that word, but it's really a poor word to use, because if it's private, I can keep you off my property.
It's a special benefiting use that we've been speaking to. I'm sorry if I used the word private today. I didn't mean to.
Well, a lot of people on the board, and they're always saying it's a private canal. Well, if it's a private canal, I can put a gate across it. We all know that's not true. it's as public as the street that I live on. I cannot keep somebody from coming on my street, and I cannot keep anybody from traveling on that water. And my problem is this a slow-moving train to the county then saying, we're gonna take your property taxes, plus we're gonna make you pay for every improvement. And that's the concern I think a lot of people have.
Well, I mean, the roads are county roads, so I don't, I don't see that happening. You know, we maintain those roads when folks call and there's a pothole or there's a storm drain that is blocked. Or, you know, we show up and we do those repairs and handle that.
And again, the last point, because I don't want this to go around in circles forever. Who owns the land underneath the Grand Canal?
It is sovereign submerged lands
Yes.
owned by the state.
Yes, right. Just like the Bayway is owned by the state and is maintained by the state. So that's, I guess I've said all I need to say. It just it doesn't seem right.
Okay, thank you, Thomas.
All right, thank you.
Rich, again, if we could stay focused on the methodology, I just really appreciate it because I want to get to the rest of the presentation, and then I promise we will get to all the other questions that are posted and hands raised. So Rich, if you could unmute yourself.
I didn't have a question. I must have been fumbling with my phone. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, greatly appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Tammy, if you would unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ms. Levy, for all your hard work. I know it's been a long road. What about the boat ramp where they collect money for the trailers and that to park down there? Can they contribute any to help? Because a lot of those boats do come up to the restaurant and hotel and that.
The boat ramp, you mean at the marina?
At Fort DeSoto Park, they have to pay to park their trailers.
The fees for the boat ramp at Fort DeSoto Park go towards maintaining Fort DeSoto Park. So those are not fees that could be utilized for this purpose.
Thank you again.
Sure. Thank you, Tammy. Okay, Karen. Karen, if you would unmute yourself.
Yes, two comments. Several of the residents did time-lapse videos showing a lot of the boats that come here for recreational use and anchor up along the sand. Clearly, they're not renting slips. It goes back to the usage of our canal again. And I'm just wondering, you know, if it is totally absurd that we couldn't start tracking Florida boat registration numbers to quantify the number of non-resident or non-slip rental users of this canal. And I would also mention that I've had an opportunity to raise this concern at the state level to Senator Brandeis because I happen to know him. And I told him our deep water access channels are diminishing throughout Pinellas County. It's not only our canal, but also Johns Pass, etc. And that I thought it behooved the state to really come up with a budget line item for dredging of these canals, because the state of Florida will ultimately suffer from the lack of commercial entities and recreational vehicles accessing these channels if this does not pass through the residents. So there is a county loss and certainly a state loss when you look at that. So I guess I do think we need to quantify the non-rental and the non-residential use somehow. And I think Florida registration slips could certainly do that if we do a time-lapse study for a period of time. And secondly, I do think the state needs to take a look at this.
Thank you for that feedback, Karen.
You're welcome.
All right. Al, I'm unmuting you. Sorry, not available to talk. All right. Okay, Al, I'm going to have to promote you to a panelist. It looks like you have an older version of Zoom. And let's see, you may leave and come back. Hold on. There he is. Al, are you there? Hello, Al, are you there? All right, let's see if he comes back in. Oops. All right, and Dennis.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can.
It wasn't clear to me if Colony Key was being included in the assessment process at all.
Yes, a quarter of a unit
For the whole entire complex?
for each unit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I think I have gotten all the hands right now. Oops, one more just jumped in. William,
Yes.
hi. Do you have
Hi.
a question for us?
There is a question by an anonymous posed, but I didn't catch the answer. It says, so the marina gets 465 votes when we do which methodology that we're going to use?
The water access unit methodology includes both the marina's wet slips and the dry slips. And then because a water access unit is equal to 2 slips, you take that total number and you divide it by 2. So that's how you get to that number for the marina and that in that area.
Well, is it going to be one? Okay, so
But they only get 1 vote, correct? They only
they get one vote, not 465.
correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Al, are you there? Okay, still no Al. All right, so I'm going to move on to the rest of the presentation now. Just going to fast forward us here. All right, so now for the poll. You've heard a lot of information and a lot of great questions. So, based on that, which methodology between the linear frontage foot method or the water access method do you believe is more equitable to the community? And so you're going to see a poll pop up on your screen. It's anonymous, and the results will be posted as soon as we give folks an opportunity to vote and we get the majority of the feedback. And then we'll hit the button and you'll see what it says. So we're at about 53% participation, doing great. I love it. Starting to slow down. We're at about 68%. I know we can do better than that. Come on, guys. I'd love to see 100%. We're at 69%. Anybody else want to vote? Oops, we just hit 70. We're still going. People are still jumping in. All right, it looks like we've kind of settled out at about 80%. So Brian, if you want to show people the results. All right, so about 96% of those who participated felt that the water access unit usage, water access and usage methodology was more fair. And we had 81% participation in the poll. So thank you very much. All right. So in summary, there was one person who had a question about the map of the assessment area. That is immediately your first picture there on the right. So what we're proposing is a partnership, between the county and the community, where the county would fund 82% of the project based on the best case scenario and reutilizing that material and placing it over on Paspero Beach. The remainder of the costs would be shared amongst the community using a non-ad valorem assessment methodology. There's a portion of that. This is how we had to break it out, is it's the quality of the material. So about 82% of the material met the state's criteria for beach placement, and the remainder did not. It was the fines and the silts that are at the bottom of the sand trap area. And so those cannot be placed on the beach. So that's how it broke out. 82% good stuff and 18% not so good stuff. The assessment can be split over multiple years. So as I said, that is a one-time cost, but you can split it out into payments if that's what the community would like to do. And then when you look at the community involved, we have about 116 single family residential properties, 1 commercial property, and 30 various condo complexes of various size. All right, so our next step is monitor that permitting process. We really want to get through that as quickly as we can so we can move forward in the process. Hopefully we get, that continued positive feedback. That way we can, solicit your feedback on the specific assessment that would be charged to your property. If the community supports the project, then we move forward with the process and we prepare the bid package. We get the assessment authorization process moving forward. We bid the project and we construct the project. So you're not married to this, I promise you. But again, we just want to kind of get a little feedback on what you're feeling right now. And again, it's an anonymous poll. So you're not being held to anything. You will actually get a formal petition in the mail. But if you had to choose today, where are you sitting right now? You're doing great. The participation numbers are going up. We're at about 50% participation. We're about 70% now. Again, it's okay if you're not sure. There's the last one in there is just not sure yet. That's perfectly fine. Let's see if we can get the participation up to at least same as the last poll. We're at 78%. We just hit 80. Looking good, guys. Looking good. Okay, Brian, it looks like we're there. 82% participation. Looks like it stopped and Brian shared it. So it looks like right now, at least the folks on this call prefer the assessment methodology using water access unit. We still have some folks that are not sure yet, and that's perfectly fine. There's more time, and about 20% that do not support the assessment. And nobody said linear frontage foot. So there you go. All right, so with that, the rest of the time is just going to be questions and answer. If you can, we're getting a lot of questions, so I do want to make sure that we can get to everyone. So if you can make those questions really clear and concise, so we can get everybody answered. There's well over 150 people registered tonight, so I know there's a lot of questions, and I want to make sure that we're able to get to everyone. What is the cubic yards per year? As far as the accumulation that's moving to the east, it's 30,000 cubic yards per year. Why can't FDEP and Army Corps simply handle the movement of the sand to the areas that need replenishment without requiring anyone to fund any portion of this? Seems pretty simple to have Army Corps and DEP use the source of replenishment sand from past Grand Canal to handle their issues in other areas. So, well, the Department of Environmental Protection does not do beach renourishment. So it's not, you know, that is not a function that they provide. So the county acts as a local sponsor to all beach renourishment functions in the county. The Army Corps typically performs the work on those beaches that have a federal authorization. Right now, this is not a federally authorized project. The sand trap and the Grand Canal itself are not federally authorized. But you know, in the future, it may be that the sand trap and the Grand Canal are approved borrow areas for removing sand, which would make it eligible going forward. It's just not eligible today. Is there any reason that the contractor procurement based on current design can't commence immediately? Crash the schedule so that once permits are completed, dredging can begin. We have to go through the procurement process, and in government, there are a lot of rules and regulations on procurement, and we need to follow those processes. But we will do our best to expedite it, working with our purchasing department. We also have to work the assessment process in tandem, but that's a parallel process and shouldn't interfere with that. Claim of private property issues with sand that below the high tide mark belongs to the state. This is based on a 19-year moving survey. So how does any, but perhaps a few inches move into even possibly a private property ownership? Is accretion not defined as slow over a period of time, almost imperceivable manner? This situation has occurred over a 5 to 6 year period. The only major event that has occurred has been the development of Colony Key. Did any of their improvements exacerbate the problem? Has this been studied? If it did cause any of the sand to shoal, by rule, they would not have any accretion rights. So, all right, so, you know, by state law, an accretion is exactly what I just read it, you know, and Tom provided. It is an accumulation over an extended period of time. And accretions are owned without doing anything. Above the mean high water line is the adjacent property owner. Below that is the state. An avulsion, which could happen during a storm event, a large volume of sand comes in and closes off an area, stays in state ownership. And an avulsion cannot be claimed or you know, become private property. It stays salt and submerged lands. Aptum did look at you know, the shoreline of Colony Key and the small structures that are out there, and determined that they did not cause this to occur. So yes, it has been studied. I think that answers everything. If not, let me know. Based on the Aptum study, the sand originated from Pass-a-Grille. Is there any method to build a jetty or something along Pass-a-Grille to prevent the sand from coming around over the following 5 years? So the Aptum study said that the sand came from Shell Key, not Pass-a-Grille, just as was described at the beginning. So we did look at structures as a design alternative. They'll be incredibly difficult to permit. Give you an example. If you're familiar with St. Pete Beach and Upham Beach, those structures out there took us 20 years to permit. They're very difficult to do, very expensive. And honestly, the state prefers the simpler methodologies that don't have any offsite impacts. And we would have to demonstrate that any type of jetty like that wouldn't have another unintended consequence, if you will. As part of the assessment, were we able to understand the usage statistics of the Grand Canal? We were not. If 60% does not approve the project, can the project still get done if the community gets together to fund it themselves? Yes. Why would the county pay the cost for nourishment of Pass-A-Grille and spread that across all county landowners, but not be willing to use the same methodology for Grand Canal? County pays outright versus essentially reimbursing the dredging cost. The Pass-A-Grille nourishment is funded by the Army Corps of Engineers. The county does have a percentage that they pay for that. It is for the public beach landward of the erosion control line. All right, so our county policy for this type of project, for navigational dredging is assessment. We've done 2 prior projects via assessment. And I don't think I have anything else to offer on that question, but if you have a follow-up, please let me know. Is dredging behind the homes on Ocean View part of this work? If not, why not? No, it is not. The dredging directly adjacent to Ocean View was not part of the study. That canal, that channel that runs right along Ocean View is very stable. If a homeowner or condo owner sells their home or unit within the time frame that the assessment is due, does the assessment follow the mortgage deed or the homeowner that agreed to it at the time? It stays with the property. If it's not, the thing that we need to want to be clear about with non-ad valorem assessments is if they don't get paid, you will end up with a lien on your property. All right, so that's very important to know about this type of assessment. What special benefit do non-slip owners receive from the dredging? I think I answered this one before, but just to clarify, it is the maintenance. One, you still have access to the canal, and you have your property values are maintained by having deep water access. Are the condo fees listed per condo or per unit owner? Per condo unit, not per owner. I clarify that 2 people may live in a condo. It's not that charge per person. So it's just for the one unit. How often does a project the county is involved with? There's nothing else. I'm not sure what that question was. So if you want to follow up on that one. Why wasn't the state included in the assessment since they own Shell Key and it is part of the project? Shell Key is not part of the project. We're working north of Shell Key. Basin 3 may slightly move into the boundary of the preserve, but it's all submerged underwater. But the Shell Key Preserve itself is not part of the project. Can monies that are collected at the Fort DeSoto boat ramp, we already answered that one. Come close to the best case scenario. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that one is. If you could type in another question, thank you. Answer that one. Is the community just defined as Tierra Verde, or does it include other communities adjacent to Tierra Verde who have access to Grand Canal? It's just those parcels that were within the map that I showed. So it's this portion of the community within Tierra Verde, not Tierra Verde as a whole. Your recommendation seems to be in the right direction of being equitable. However, did you look at charging the actual users, those traversing with water vessels? This could be done a few different ways. For example, extra charges on Florida voter registration and or electronic sensing of the vessel, like a toll highway booth. We did not. When you refer to 500 homes, is this referring to the homes and condos on Grand Canal, or would everyone interpret it? Yes, just the homes along the canal, correct. Will our taxes, which already represent Grand Canal access, be reduced to offset any incremental costs since we already pay for this benefit? No, this is a separate charge. It's a non-ad valorem assessment, and it's not tied to the value of your property. So that would not be reduced as a result. So when the time comes to, oh, sorry, Thomas, you asked this one. It's about about the roads. So I'm going to skip that one. Not a booth, just a sensor. We have not, determined a mechanism in which to track traffic. I'm sorry, folks. How far away from the canal are the condos that are included? Again, if the condo property abuts the canal, then it was within the boundaries of the assessment. If it's across the street, from condos that are on the canal, then no, just those that are abutting. The new Marriott contributes to the bed tax. Shouldn't that mean something? If this goes forward, then 80% of the cost of this project would be paid for by the county using bed tax. At some point tonight, can you please show the visual map of the properties that would be assessed? Okay, Robert, I showed that one. Let me know if you need me to pull it back up. Sarah, please answer my question. I'm sorry, Sarah, I don't see your question. If you wouldn't mind either retyping it or raising your hand. When will you know the best case, worst case? Is there any sort of bonding that will work? We will probably know more in the spring. And I just say that because I know we will know by the end of this calendar year what the Department of Environmental Protection is going to do, because they have timelines and they have to either issue or deny a permit. And like I said, the feedback's been nothing but great. So I expect us to have our state permit in hand by the end of the year, probably sooner. The federal is the part that we don't have control over. I really don't know when we're going to get it, but we should, at least have an idea of their general thoughts on our approach by the spring. And bonding, well, the county will be fronting the cost for the project. So bonding, I don't believe is necessary. Are there any state level funding or grants for this project? No, there are not. We have looked at it. We've looked at various state grants, but they just don't apply to this type of navigational dredging. Since owners are liable for a submerged land lease, owners don't own the water. Why doesn't the entity we are paying the submerged land lease to pay the assessment? Okay, we can't assess the state, so that's part of it. But again, the state owns the submerged land by virtue of being a state. So when the state of Florida became a state, all those sovereign submerged lands that were navigable at the time were in state ownership. So they don't, maintain sovereign submerged lands, but they do allow for the use of it. And as I mentioned, those fees are utilized by the Division of Lands Management for a variety of activities by the state. Is Sunset Point included? I'm sorry, I don't know which condo unit is Sunset Point. So maybe you could get with me later and I could look at that one specifically. Same thing about Sunset Point. I'm sorry, I'm not able to think which condo unit that is, or which condominium complex that is. So if you could just get with me later, send me an email or give my office a call, I'd be happy to look that one up. Will the condos on Colony Road pay per unit? Correct, yes. How far around the corner on both sides to the west into the Bay Gulf does Grand Canal extend? That was in the map that I had up. If you need me to pull it back up, just pop another note in here and say, Kelly, pull the map back up. answered that one. I did have a question above. Gary, sorry, I don't see the, oh, wait a minute. I see another question from Gary. So I think this one is it. And I believe technology exists to enable recording vessel traffic by specific vessel. Thank you. What is the assessment going to be for the complex that created this initial issue in the first place, Sunset Point? There are no boat slips, but this development changed the water flow. Okay, so maybe Sunset Point is Colony Key. I think it's Colony Key at Sunset Point. Maybe that's what folks are referring to. It's basically what we did for Colony Key is we looked at, so if the project goes forward, you know, they are eligible to have docks on the north side of that property. So we did an assessment of how many slips could be permitted, you know, in that particular area. And based on that and the number of units in the property, there's a lot, obviously. It turned out to be half of a unit per, half of a water access, not half, excuse me, quarter of a water access unit per property owner. So per condo unit. So about $300 so about $300. And again, Aptum did look at that, you know, the structures there on the shoreline and determined that that was not the cause of the shoaling. Is it not accurate that the only reason the county is permitting and funding the dredging at all is because there's public use of the canal? In other words, if the marina were not on the canal, this would be a totally private dredging responsibility. That is true. The use of the non-ad valorem assessment process does require a public purpose. So if there were no public purpose to this and it was simply residential homes on either side and there wasn't this other public uses, people coming down there to get gas and go to the hotel or go for a meal, the non-ad valorem assessment process really would not be appropriate for this project. Thank you for the question. What about an assessment for boats parking at Fort DeSoto? Again, those costs that folks pay to park at Fort DeSoto go towards operating and maintaining the park. None of the above should have an additional answer that suggests neither of the two options. Thank you for the feedback. How many people are on this meeting? All right, 150 registered, and we have 86 on the call, on the meeting right now. Is there any way to get the permit as perpetually renewed permit so that the maintenance dredge areas could be performed in the future years? Yes. The lack of a none of the above option in the first poll suggests that while no decision has been made, there are only two options we will be able to choose from. Is that a fair summary? Those are the two assessment methodologies that we've looked at. I provided a slide. I mean, when I say looked at, I mean, we actually did the math. We actually assessed it, we calculated it and went through that, you know, to look at it in depth. We did look at the other methodologies. We just, again, the feedback that we received from the community was that you wanted something that made use that the access and the use of the canal was more equitably distributed. Property value didn't really get us there. It actually negatively impacted some single family homeowners and some condo owners. And it really didn't make sense because, you know, a house is here and a house is here and they may have wildly different property values, but only have the same beneficial use of the canal and that benefit that they have. And then the equal amongst all, that did not meet the community's expectations of you know, looking at how commercial activity does benefit from the canal. those, we worked with our attorneys to make sure that we looked at all available assessment methodologies that were tried and true for this type of navigational dredging. And so we did look at them. The linear frontage foot method was the first one that we looked at. Felt that, because the marina was very large, has a very large waterfront, that they would have a good portion of the project. It didn't turn out to be, what the community expected. The water access unit methodology, means that they would pay 50% of the cost, and then the other residential uses would pay the other 50%. So it is more distributed. But we don't have another methodology to go to at this point in time. Those were all the methodologies that we have available to us right now, or that we know about, that were researched by our attorneys. Are we asking for an appropriation from the state? I am not sure about that. Again, because there's a private piece of this project and a public piece of this project, and the county's already paying for the public piece of the project. I'm not sure that that we can get an appropriation for kind of the residents and the the commercial aspects of it, paying their portion of it. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure about that, and I don't know if somebody's applying or not. So, is there a concern the canal could close before dredging starts? Based on the modeling, no. We're on track. I mean, worst case scenario was that it would close in 5 years. That would be 2025, but we're way ahead of that. Barring a storm, I think the timeline is going to be just fine. Where will the sand trap be located? So that is kind of just north of Colony Key, right directly adjacent to Grand Canal. And the purpose of that is, as that sand is migrating to the east, that the sand falls into the trap and fills the trap first before it impacts Grand Canal. What wasn't clear in the initial assessment methodology was the 82% Pinellas County contribution is coming from the sand being sold to Pass-A-Grille. Is there any Pinellas County out-of-pocket expense? Well, the sand is not being sold to Pass-A-Grille. The county, with the Army Corps of Engineers, and then the county serves as a local sponsor to the project, nourish the public beach on Pass-A-Grille. Through this project, the county would bid this project out. The Army Corps is not involved in this part of it at this moment. The county would hire a dredging company. We would pump the sand to Pass-A-Grille within the approved beach nourishment template, and the sand would be spread onto the public beach. So we're not selling it to Pass-A-Grille. We're placing it there on the public beach. Hope that answers your question. What happens if we don't get 60% approval? Are there other options? 60% is not in the ordinance. You won't find it anywhere. It's really just a policy that we've had in place for a long time. Typically, when a community, wants a project to go forward, they know they have good support for it. I will say, I think we were at 51%, and we got a lot of folks never turned in the interest letters that we mailed out. But of those that we did get, we got 51%, we're interested in continuing this process where we are tonight and moving this forward. So we did move forward once we got that 51%. That's the initial threshold, was exceed that 50% mark. So we got that. I'm not sure, but typically, right now our policy is that we would not move forward. But we can talk about that as things progress. How often do county projects come close to the best case scenarios or worst case? Again, this is the first time that we're actually proposing a navigational dredge where we'll be proposing to beneficially reuse the material. The two other projects that we did, the material could not be beneficially reused, and it had to be disposed of at a landfill or other area. So again, the best case scenario is driven by permitting, and the regulatory agencies. And so far, you know, the state is very supportive of this. And, you know, so I'm, you know, really hopeful that that's, you know, where we're going to land. And I feel very good about it. I really do. I wouldn't tell you if I didn't. So. What is the impact to Shell Key as a result of the loss of sand on the west side facing the Gulf? Well, Shell Key, as you're all aware, is a natural barrier island. It's been evolving and changing for years. It's only about 50 years old to start with, so it's continued to evolve. If you go back and look at some of the older aerials, you'll see at one point in time it was divided into 3 parts, and actually where it is split, what we affectionately call Irma Pass, is right where it was split before. So, you know, Shell Key is going to continue to evolve because it's a natural coastal barrier island. And, you know, we don't manipulate Shell Key. So, you know, we just, I guess I'll just say it goes with the flow. Is there something we can do to prevent or significantly slow the movement of sand so it doesn't need dredging every 5 years? The only thing that, you know, we tried to look at was, again, the placement of a structure, and that structure would have to be on Shell Key. And that is just very problematic for a number of reasons, because it is a highly dynamic coastal barrier island that changes with storms, and permitting such a structure would be incredibly difficult. But again, if all goes well, everybody's fingers are crossed, and we get that sand trap approved as a borrow area, then that sand can perpetually be used for beach projects in the future. How to make this a federally authorized project? Well, again, that's what we're working towards with the permitting of the sand trap as a approved borrow area. Do private residents on beaches that receive nourishment sand pay an assessment for receiving the sand? Could they share the cost of our sand? No, the federally authorized project does not require residents that live on the adjacent to the beaches to pay. It is part of the federally authorized project. The Army Corps typically pays about 60%, and then the local sponsor pays the other 40%. It would not be appropriate to assess folks living along the beach, you know, for this. Since it is state-owned submerged land and we have paid submerged land lease fees for many years, could the state should contribute. Thank you for the feedback. Well, I'm going to skip the first part of this and just please be polite. Thank you. But I'll read the second part of it. Get serious and involve all affected political parties to resolve this in the smartest and most simple manner. I believe we are. Is there a design yet? Yes. The design, the actual, I mean, just the layout was in the picture that I showed. And the template for Paso Girl Beach has been the same template for years for every nourishment that's been done on Paso Girl. If we approve this assessment, are we not just writing an open check to the county for continued maintenance, and should we have an avulsion due to storms? No, this is a one-time, and the assessment, if you approve it and you want to move forward with it, the assessment would just be for this project and this project alone, no future projects. Any future projects, you know, if something else were to happen and the community requested a service that needed an assessment, it would be something completely separate. But again, avulsions are the land remains with the state. And again, the whole part, you know, the best part about our design is that we're trying to get that sand trap and the canal there in that area approved as a borrow source, so that in the future, Army Corps projects can come in and just take that sand. How wide is the dredging proposal? Oh, I don't have that number offhand. but the canal would stay in its exact same alignment. We are not proposing to go any wider because that would be problematic from a permitting perspective. So the Grand Canal would stay in its original alignment. If a construction dredging occurs, would boat use of the Grand Canal or beaches be expected to be impacted during that time? Probably a little bit, but honestly not much. It's pretty clear where the dredges are working, and you know, it's just that they put out caution to mariners so that folks can, you know, just be cautious of going by the dredging operation slowly. And for those who have seen the beach renourishment projects, it would be the same type of process. The sand slurry would be pumped onto the beach into like a small containment area that's made of sand, and then the water dewaters out, and then it's spread out over the beach using typical grading equipment. With all the taxes being collected by St. Petersburg from the commercial properties, why are they not paying some of the cost for dredging? Well, you know, St. Petersburg uses the same methodology that we use for dredging. They do an assessment. Since we are assessing all properties within the project area, regardless of whether they're in the unincorporated area or the city of St. Petersburg, I think, you know, that portion of it is covered. And then again, the public part of it, the 82% going to the beaches, that's something that the county funds for everyone when it comes to beach management. Will the canal be closed during dredging? No, it would not need to be closed. Without a jetty or other solution to prevent sand migration in the Grand Canal, can residents be expected to be assessed every 5 years for reoccurring dredging projects? That's not the plan. The plan is that we permit that sand trap, and there's no future assessments. So that's our plan. That's what we're working towards. Nothing's obviously written in stone, but that's what we're working on. Kelly, I asked this question above, but I don't believe it was answered. Specifically, was the option to charge the specific users, those actually navigating the canal? I heard you say to others that this is not possible. I disagree. There are at least 2 ways and probably other methods. A fee could be upon request added to Florida vessel registration, just like hunting and fishing licenses. Other method is using sensing technology to register a passing vessel in the Grand Canal, similar to technology used for the Sun Pass. I understand that both of these methods are used in other areas of the United States. This may not be acceptable to your project methodology, but weren't they at least considered charge the users as they are the true benefactors? Well, the vessel registration fee is charged by the state, and it's a fixed amount. So those are fees that go back to the state. The county does get some of those revenues very specifically for maintaining aids to navigation, which I know you guys are very familiar with as we've been out there to adjust the buoys and things like that to make sure that navigation is safe. I am not sure that the county can add upon a state fee. It's a state fee, not a county fee. If you'd like to send me some information on this sensing thing, but I don't feel I'm not sure how we would charge people extra on a boater registration fee. There are thousands and thousands of boaters in Pinellas County, and there may be some that don't even know where Grand Canal is. And would it be fair for them to be charged for something that they don't come into the area? Again, I do believe the methodology that we've provided, it hits the mark. It's more equitable. I realize that, yes, each property owner would have a component to it, but we've done everything we can to minimize those costs and to absorb as much as possible in a public project and to create an equitable distribution. How often do county projects come close to the best case scenarios versus worst case? Again, this is a very specific, very specific to this project. So I'm not sure I can answer that in any other way. The channel behind the homes in Ocean View is not stable and is also filled in such that most owners can only get to their docks in high tide. Okay. This area wasn't looked at even in the Optum study. this was not an issue that was brought to our attention as part of the scope of that project. So again, because that channel is very specific to the residents and property owners on Ocean View, you know, they could approach the county about an assessment for that channel if it meets the requirements. When will we know if there is no maintenance fees in the future? Have to go through this again. We'll know when we get through the permitting. Are the Colony Key property owners included in the assessment methodology? Yes, they are. With all the boats that now anchor on the new beach and Grand Canal, it seems a safety issue to boaters entering the Grand Canal. Perhaps no mooring signs need to be erected. That beach area above the mean high water line is owned. It's owned by the upland riparian owners, so that's actually private property. Doesn't the 82% that the county is paying cover the non-resident use of the canal? Very good point, Darlene. I hadn't thought of that, so thank you for bringing that up. How were the properties selected to participate in the assessment? What is defined by a property abutting the canal? It's those that are have a shoreline directly adjacent to the canal and use the canal to access Pass-a-Grille Channel. Are there any state level fundings or grants for this project? As I mentioned that one, there's not. So will sand from our slips be removed when dredging? No, this is very specific to the canal and the sand trap. Thank you, Nancy, for the clarification. Thank you, Julie. $250,000 of penny for Pinellas was used in 2008 to remove Australian pines from Shell Key per the 2000 management plan. Keeping Shell Key a barrier island was also part of the plan, yet no funds were made available to keep the North Pass open. Why does the county have no skin in the game here? The management plan does not require Shell Key to remain a barrier island. Shell Key is a natural coastal system. It is very dynamic. I know you've seen it change even in just a few recent years. It's not something that we manipulate, no more than we manipulate Three Rooker or any of the other islands that are out there. It is a natural system. And I would suggest that the county has a lot of skin in the game. The county funded the initial study at $200,000 and as proposed here, would be paying 82% of the construction costs. Can you clarify your comment that Colony Key can have docks on the north side Grand Canal of their property? Is that to say if when the dredging project is complete that Colony Key can add new docks? They do have the right to have docks there. Yes, they do. So it would go through a permitting process. It's not like just construct them, but they do have the rights to have docks. Will we have access to recording the show for other condo owners? Yes, absolutely. It will be posted to the county's website. How often does it, Al, I know you've asked this question multiple times, the best case scenario versus worst case. This is very specific to this project because of the permitting complexities of it and how we can beneficially reuse the sand. That's not very typical in other types of projects. Will a perpetual permit be pursued? Yes. Will that then be used to source sand from Grand Canal to other nourishment locations? And who and how would future maintenance dredges then be paid for to keep Grand Canal open? Again, so state law requires sand to be placed within the system. All right, so we could not take the sand, say, and pump it all the way up to Clearwater. It really needs to stay in a localized system. And there is an inlet management plan for Pass-a-Grille that kind of defines the sand in the system and how much can be removed and how much can't. So we need to be consistent with the inlet management plan. But sand, again, if it's permitted the way we hope it will be, and that sand trap becomes an approved borrow area, then the Army Corps during their projects for Pass-a-Grille, Long Key, anything within this vicinity could utilize the sand, to correct erosional issues on those beaches, and at the same time, keep Grand Canal open. How can we get a copy of your presentation? I will email the presentation to Kelly at the association, and she can share it with anyone who would like to have it. I can't place it on the website just because it doesn't meet the ADA requirements, but I'm happy to provide it. I'm very concerned that the timeline for dredging is too far out based on how fast the channel is narrowing. What is the plan for communicating to the community on the status of the timeline? We are going to do routine updates. I'm very lucky to have Brian Lowack as a partner in this project, and he meets with the Tierra Verde Community Association very regularly, I think monthly, and I give him updates. He shares those out so that we are making sure that you're getting the most recent information. So I like to keep communicating directly out through the association because I think it's the most efficient way to get that information out to everybody. I'm concerned that we risk the marina closing if they do not find it reasonable to stay in business. Thank you for that comment. FYI, interest letter was received by the property management at our complex and it wasn't sent to individual addresses. Thank you. Has there been direct engagement and discussion with the commercial operations and marina, restaurant, hotel about this project, and where is their level of support? There has been engagement with the marina representative. I can't speak to their, where they're sitting with this project right now, but I do believe they indicated that they have marinas in other states and that dredging is done by assessment at those locations too. So it is a process they're very familiar with. On behalf of TVCA, we want to thank Kelli Levy and Brian Lowack on listening to the voices of the community and developing alternative financial options that are more equitable based on water uses methodology. We look forward to continuing to work together in all of our efforts and mutual concerns for property owners in Tierra Verde. Thank you, Larry. Once the initial dredging project is settled and completed, what will be the maintenance aspect of Grand Canal, and can you provide an overview of that? So again, generally, what our approach is and what we're putting out there to the regulatory agencies is that there really would not be a maintenance effort that we would be petitioning the community about. It would be as part of upcoming nourishment projects, and it would be handled in that way. So we would, again, if the Army Corps is planning a project and the Grand Canal and the sand trap are part of that, that would be communicated out to the community. Most of the impacts you would see would just be the dredge in the area for a few days. Again, this isn't really meant to take a long time, removing that sand and taking it to the project. So. What if the Army Corps doesn't get 100% of the property owners living along the beaches to sign the easement agreement for beach nourishment? Will this affect future maintenance costs for Grand Canal? The area that we're having this problem, and thank you, Kelli, for the question, is really on Sand Key, which runs from Clearwater, South Clearwater Beach, so south of the pass there, to Reddington Beach. So that is where we're having the easement challenges. And to Kelly's point, if we don't, right now, the policy is if we don't get 100% of those easements, that the project, the scheduled 2024 renourishment of Sand Key would not move forward. However, we do have other projects on the books coming up. We have the Pass-a-Grille nourishment that right now is scheduled out there in 23-24. We have Long Key, we have Treasure Island, and those areas don't have the same easement issues that Sand Key has. So those are moving forward just fine. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, Scott. I know it's been a long meeting, so I appreciate y'all hanging in there. Thank you for taking the time to explain this project. Thank you, Donna. Greatly appreciate you being here. Kelly, you're doing an awesome job. Thank you. I'm going to need a throat lozenge after this one. And answering the questions, we appreciate all the work. Thank you. Again, I appreciate you being here and sharing your information with us. Does the county realize that if residents don't agree to pay for this and the canal closes, that property values would significantly decline? If this were to happen, the assessed values would decline as well as the property tax collected. Has this issue been discussed? I have not reached out to Mike Twitty to ask him how such a impact would, would affect property values. But I do agree that obviously direct access to the Gulf of Mexico is a huge component of the value of your property. Thank you, Sheila, for your compliment. Appreciate it. Will we be able to view the recording of this webinar again? Bless you. Yes, you will be able to if you want to. I know it's a long one. When will I have my 2-minute open discussion time? If you have your hands up, we've only got 11 more questions here. And then if you have your hand up, I will go to the hands raised. Is there any negative impact of the basin to our shoreline and the abutting property in a storm surge? Okay, so yeah, we did hear from representatives of Colony Key that they were concerned about any impacts from Basin 3 on their LOMAR, which does benefit their flood insurance, but also any impact to their shoreline. The work that we did showed that there was no impact at all because it's all under the water work. It's all below the water. And we have provided the modeling and the engineering to Colony Key so that they can share with their engineering firm. Thank you, John. How does this project compare and contrast with the sand buildup in Johns Pass? It's very different. Johns Pass, the sand accumulation there on the north side it's a natural inlet process. It's found in inlets all around the state, but we are working on that one as well and have defined some alternatives that that could address a lot of the issues that are currently there. Larry shared that the TVCA can email out a link to the presentation to all residents. Thank you, Larry. Can you show the slide again that shows where the sand trap is located? Sure. Oops, that might have been it. It's out of my way. Nope. Sorry, keep going. Sorry about that. I got to get back to the beginning. Okay, there we go. So the sand trap is called Basin 3, and it will be directly adjacent to Grand Canal. Again, because what we're trying to accomplish here is as that sand is moving to the east, that it falls into the trap first. Again, don't focus so much on the exact shape of it or exactly where it's located. It could shift a little bit, to the west. It could shift a little bit further to the north. It might be more round. It's really dependent on where the mean high water line is and where we can work there. But really the point is that it's going to be designed to a certain volume of sand is captured there. Relative to the Johns Pass question, is the methodology proposed similar? We don't have anything proposed for a methodology for that project right now. It was basically they're at where you were a year ago. So we just finished the study. Are the water access units assigned to the few vacant lots on Grand Canal on the same basis as water access units assigned to Colony Key, specifically a quarter or a half? They're one, because a single family home can have one dock with two slips. So they're one water access unit, not a half or a quarter. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Bill. Good to hear from you. Could you ask Mr. Twitty, please? I will do so. Thank you. Thank you, Vincent. Who in Colony Key did you provide the information to? Oh gosh. Mark Stroud. And there was one other gentleman who is one of the building representatives, but Mark Stroud did receive the report. And thank you for the anonymous compliment. Appreciate it. All right, so that is all the questions there. So I'm going to shift back over, and we got a bunch of hands. So Sheila, you're up first. And I had just unmute yourself, and you're ready to go.
Kelly, I didn't mean to do my hand, so never mind.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Karen. Karen Wise?
I didn't mean to either. I'm sorry.
No, no worries.
I hit the wrong key.
No worries. Okay, Robert.
Good evening, Ms. Levy. The first question I have for you is, we all agree that the sand that is filling the Grand Canal is coming from Paso Grill and that side of the coast, specifically the Pinellas Federal Shore Protection Project, which is used for beach renourishment. Is that correct?
No, Robert. Actually, the two studies that were done independently confirmed that the source of the sand that is impacting Grand Canal is actually from Shell Key proper. And Shell Key was formed, started forming before any beach renourishment ever started. And the sand source, for the formation of Shell Key is largely from the Tampa Bay ebb shoal.
Well, the sand that in those studies that comes around Paso Grill shows up at Shell Key, but then it migrates both north and south. And the migration north is what fills in to the Grand Canal. In fact, it wouldn't be sand that would be beach quality if it wasn't coming from that beach area. And so I am somewhat surprised that you haven't gone back to the Corps of Engineers and asked them to include the Grand Canal dredging project as part of their federal shore protection program. And if that were the case, then 60% of those funds would come from the Corps, 20% from Florida, and 20% from Pinellas through your TDC funds. And that would certainly, be the start point. And if necessary, you can always go back to your local congressman and add that feature into the defense authorization and appropriation bills for the Corps of Engineers. On the one hand, the folks are benefiting on the coast there from the beach renourishment program, both in Sand Key, Treasure Island, and Long Key. And if that's the case, the homeowners over here on the Grand Canal, which are getting that sand either directly or through the process of the Shell Key renourishment, they shouldn't be paying for something that is coming from over there. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it's equitable. So I think you need to look at that as a as an alternate way of funding this thing, which then would be done. The other comment I'd like to make here is that there are other parts of Florida, such as the Collier Creek in Collier County, which is very similar to this, and this was totally paid for by TDC funds. And so, and they have private properties and they have commercial properties, just like you have here. And so there are other places in Florida that do fund these kinds of dredging projects strictly by TDC funds. So, you know, I just wanted to point out a few things like this that you need to look at as an alternate way of funding this rather than dumping this on the owners of the along the Grand Canal and the marina.
We did look at for exactly the purpose that you mentioned with regard to, you know, if a federal project causes harm, the Army Corps needs to come in and correct that, because we have, I think, 3 independent studies that showed that beach renourishment sand is not the principal source of sand from this area. You know, this has all been provided to the Army Corps. So it does not qualify for as part of the federal project. And so I agree, it'd been great benefit, because obviously they would pay a huge chunk of it, but the bottom line is the science just did not support that. But thank you. I will look into Collier County and see exactly what they're doing with their sand. I appreciate the feedback. Dennis?
Yeah, Kelly, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, my name's Dennis Marquis. I wanted to thank you, the county staff and the commissioners for all the work that they obviously put into this. And I also wanted to thank our own Terra Verde Community Association board. Everything was really informative. I did want to ask a question about something that came up at the last meeting, not tonight's meeting, but the one we had a couple of months ago was one of the public meetings, and I just didn't quite understand it. But it deals with the accreted sand, the mean high water line, and the ability for Colony Key to sort of acquire additional beach property. And at that time, you made it sound like they could continue to acquire beach property from where the buildings are located all the way up to the Gulf of Mexico. And I just wasn't sure if I understood that.
Okay, so sorry, I was trying to find a good image that I could, I guess I'll just stick with this one. So yeah, through accretion, you know, as sand builds up in here, like I'm just this area here. I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. So this area is owned, for lack of a better word at this moment, by the upland riparian owners. They don't need to do anything else. There was a homeowner over here, I think it's the first house on Colony Drive, that did file quiet title. But you don't have to do that. Just by accretion law within the state of Florida, as that sand builds up over time, the sand above that mean high water line is owned by the upland riparian owner. Now, to the west of Colony Key, their property boundary stops just waterward of where their structures are. Beyond that is not their property, it's county. It's actually Shell Key Preserve and state land. It's actually within the preserve. So they could not claim Shell Key.
Okay, and that's what it seemed like you were saying last time, because I understood that there's like it's not a canal, but there's a waterway in front of the Colony Key that has some rocks and things. And I typically, because you're allowed to, go through there to the other side of the key to wade fish. And it sounded like you were telling me I couldn't do that any longer.
There is a property boundary there, but I believe the Parks Department has a sign up that says you are now entering Shell Key Preserve.
Right. That's correct.
That sign is on the that sign is right on the property boundary.
Okay, so any of the sand that's accumulating between that sign and the water is still Shell Key.
Yes,
Okay, thank you very much.
you're welcome. All right, Bridget.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'd like to piggyback what Robert was mentioning. Since your claim of the source of the sand at Grand Canal, you're claiming that it's coming from Shell Key. I disagree with that. Aptum was hired by Pinellas County to collect these data samples. At that original meeting, I asked them, why are these samples of measurement and monitoring only included from Grand Canal, Shell Key, and Paso Grill? Why aren't you using the other data from the northern beaches? Because it's evident that all that beautiful rejuvenated white sand that makes all these beaches #1 best beach by TripAdvisor, like St. Pete Beach and Clearwater, all that sand is migrating through natural tide and current dynamics. It would happen anyway, but not at this concentration. All this extra sand that's accumulating and closing Grand Canal is clearly coming from the north. It's not coming from Shell Key. It actually goes by Shell Key and loops back up into the canal. So I have a problem with basing the quote unquote science on the sands from Shell Key when that information came from Aptum, who was hired by Pinellas County. It is not in the interest of Pinellas County to have a broader comprehensive collection of data, because that would show, which I feel should be 100% of the funding for this dredging to be the county's responsibility. I do not feel that any Tierra Verde resident should be responsible for one dime of this. This sand has come from the northern beaches. It was crystal sugar-like sand that brings in tourist revenue, tax dollars collected, and there should be an allocation of some of those funds to pay for the management of this waterway. And I really, I think the whole issue has been diverted. I think that we've been deflected from what the real source of this sand is. It's not a Tierra Verde Grand Canal residents against Shell Key, against Sunset Point at Colony Key, or I think they're trying to divide us and make us think that that's the issue, when the truth is, the way I see it, it's a Pinellas County responsibility, because they brought the rejuvenation of these white beaches for tourist dollars. And lastly, you stated that simply the funding wasn't allowed because of navigational dredging, and it didn't qualify for federal funding. Well, how about county qualification? Because this canal is used by tourism, by residents, by commercial, by people just going up to get fuel. So again, my statement is that Pinellas County is responsible for 100% of the funding of this Grand Canal dredging. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. And Tammy. Tammy, are you?
Okay, yes, I muted Kelly. As you know, I've been to a lot of the meetings, and I live at Sterling on the Gulf, and I have slip 4, and we bought here 4.5 years ago for the deep water slip. I know that you answered the question that the sand was not going to be removed from our first 4 slips. So I have talked to at the meetings and Mr. Robert Burns, and he keeps suggesting that we might be able to piggyback on the dredging company to get the sand removed from our slips, which is a submerged land lease at that time.
Yes.
Can you advise me on that? Because I really want to get our big boat here.
Yeah, that is something that is feasible, and folks do that on various dredge jobs. You just would need to make sure you got your permitting in place, which for a boat slip is very simple. You just go through Pinellas County Water and Navigation and get a maintenance permit for your boat slip. And when you have that in place, once the contractor's in place, you're free to speak with them privately. It wouldn't involve the county, but you can speak with them privately.
So when you put it out for bid and you award it, at that time, I would find out who it was awarded to and contact them?
Yep, you could reach out to them on your own accord with your own permit, and it would, again, it would not be part of the county process, but you could, you know, reach out to them privately and have those conversations outside of our project.
Okay, and I did talk to the people who issue the permits, and they said it would be a maintenance permit since we already have the submerged land lease. So I do have the forms and paper for the permits, but I didn't know, you know, how soon we were, because I don't want to, you know, have to pay and get the sand out and something happens that doesn't go through and all our money's wasted.
Yeah, I would hold off on doing any permitting at this point in time and wait until, you know, if this moves forward, we get closer to construction, because a maintenance dredge permit of a boat slip really doesn't take very much time at all. Just a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Max.
Okay, I have all my files. I can't thank you enough. And I thank your worker, I think it's Brian Lowack, for all your hard work with TVCA. And I hopefully will be talking to you soon about getting our information of who's dredging the canal.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, and Mark, you are up.
It's actually Sharon Calvert sharing his computer.
Sorry, Sharon.
That's fine. Kelly, I just want to thank you very much and the county for all your hard work, listening to the residents and relooking at the assessment methodology. So I really do thank you and appreciate all that work. I do want to note that a couple of things is, and I know you have the timeline out there and you said it wouldn't close in 5 years, but before it closed, it will become a safety issue. So I am hoping that the timeline moves in, because I think it's becoming a greater safety issue as more and more boats are now anchoring, and they're anchoring off that tip at the narrowest, where it's the narrowest at the very tip, and while boats are going in and out. So I just want to, you know, I think that's something that you need to make sure that you're looking at as time goes on and that continues to narrow before the dredging occurs. I also, and I know it's not your responsibility and that you said there was no state grants, but I do want to note that I hope that our elected officials, the county commissioners, will request an appropriation from the state. So I just want to have that noted. And then my question is, how will this project actually be managed and communication kept so that we really stay on top of this and, you know, we're not 6 months down the road and really don't know what's going on?
As far as project management, you know, we have a project manager on this, and, you know, he's been managing it since we issued notice to proceed on the design, and we've been, you know, it's a high priority. I can promise you that. We've been moving things along as quickly as possible. And, you know, we are, again, I guess I can only say that we're doing everything we can to like move this as expediently as we possibly can. As soon as those permits are issued, you know, we are ready to go to bid, and we will move this forward as fast as possible. But we will continue to update TVCA. Brian, like I said, he's, you know, he meets with them regularly. He asks me for updates so that he can share that information. They share that information out to the whole community, and we will continue that. It's been working really well, I believe. And we will keep doing the same thing because it's working. And if you have additional questions, feel free to follow up after the meeting.
Thanks, Kelly.
Sure. Thank you. And Robert, did you have your hand up again? Or did I not lower it? Sorry. All right. All right. I see no other questions. Thank you, Courtney. So we will close out the meeting at this point in time. So I'm going to turn over the mic to Brian Lowack and see if he has any closing words.
No, I'd just like to thank you, Kelly, for providing this update to the community and reiterate to the community. I see, thanks to those of you that are still on and have hung on. We've still got about 60 folks left on this, so great participation from the community. And I really want to reiterate that this work that Kelly and her team have done to getting this new assessment methodology is a direct result of what we've heard from you all. So thank you for your participation in that. As far as communication moving forward, we will continue to communicate every step of the way. This will not be the last time that there is an opportunity for input from the community. Again, any assessments that go before the board, you all will have additional opportunities at that point. So again, really just want to thank you all for your commitment on this, and we look forward to working with you all as we move forward to get this thing dredged.
All right. I just want to offer, and if anybody from TVCA, I know Larry put a comment in there, but if you want to raise your hand and offer anything, I welcome you to. Oh, Larry's up there. All right, so Larry, I think you should be able to talk. Larry, can you unmute?
Yeah, there you go. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, just again, what I said in my written comments on behalf of the TVCA, we certainly want to thank you and Brian and the county staff. It's a lot of work. We all know, just looking from probably 2019 forward, I've always said that the two components is, what got us here and what is it going to take to get us out of it? Keep that Grand Canal open. And I think, looking at, in the past 2 years, between Aptum and all of the things that you have gotten in place, the lack of a better analogy for water, you're moving mountains, and so in the timeline of government, I know things are sometimes slow to get moved, but you guys have proven that theory is wrong. So kudos to you guys. We appreciate the open line of communication. Brian is always there. You're always there whenever we bring up any issues regarding the island. So we appreciate it. We're glad that we've come off of that initial assessment process. This seems to be much more fair and equitable. We'd like to see the city of St. Pete contribute more into getting away. I've always said, taxation without representation. I think those commercial property owners should look at the city of St. Pete, and they can deal with them on their own since they were annexed into the city. But good job, and we'll keep communicating with you and Brian, and look forward to, one day having this thing opened up, and then, with that new sand assessment and acquisition every 3, 4, 5 years, hopefully we'll never have to, come across having to pay for the cost of this maintenance ever in the future, not at least in our lifetime. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you to everybody for being here tonight. More to come, but I'm glad we were able to spend this time together and answer a lot of questions, and we'll talk to you again soon.